Hi, my name is and I'm a registered psychologist in New South Wales, Australia. Given what's happening in today's world and with the coronavirus, my friend Richard Bully, the photographer behind the lens, and I thought about how we can create something that's going to be useful and relevant for the current times. So today I really wanted to focus on providing some information about worries and anxieties. And I have to acknowledge a tool and a resource that really helped me in preparing for this presentation, which is called Living with Worry and Anxiety Amidst Global Uncertainty, which was put together by psychologists from Psychology Tool. So, what is worry? Well, we humans have an amazing ability to think ahead. And thinking ahead can be incredibly useful because it can help us achieve our goals. So, when we think ahead, we can anticipate any problems or challenges that we might face. And what that helps is it helps us to plan solutions, right? So that way we can achieve our goals. And this is where it's really, really useful. However, worry is a little bit different. When we worry, we often think of worst case scenario. It can be quite excessive and it can also leave us feeling quite apprehensive and anxious. So that's the main difference between thinking ahead and worrying. Now, what does worry look like or feel like? Lots of people describe it as a chain of thoughts and images. So, for example, if I had a sore throat and woke up with a sore throat tomorrow, my chain of thought might look like this. I have a sore throat. Oh, what if I have a coronavirus? Oh, what if everybody around me is already affected by my virus? What if we all die? So that's an example where you can very quickly start with, let's say, a minor thought, which then escalates into the worst case scenarios in a very short period of time and leaves us feeling quite anxious. For some people, this chain of thought is just thoughts. For some is images too, which then can make it a little bit harder too. Now, people describe it as often uncontrollable. So worrying thoughts as having a life of its own. And our bodies, unfortunately, also feel the worry. So we might experience something like muscle tensions, aches or pains. We might be feeling fatigued more than usual. We might have difficulties concentrating. We might feel restless, and we also might feel some sleep disturbances. So we don't sleep the way we used to sleep, and we can't really pinpoint why that's the case. Now, anything can trigger a worrying thought. So, for example, even when things are going really well, we might have a thought, what if something happens, right? However, there are some situations which seem to be more triggering for worries. Now, those situations tend to be, first of all, quite ambiguous. Okay, so they are quite open to different interpretations, uncertain in other ways. Also, they can be new and novel, so that we don't have any previous experience to fall back on when we are dealing with these situations, and also when they are unpredictable. So in the current situation, unfortunately, the coronavirus circumstance really ticks those three boxes. And this is why it can be really triggering for a lot of people. It's very normal and natural to be worried at the current times. However, if that worry is becoming excessive, maybe we can look at how we can manage it better. We'll talk more about that in the next session. Hi, my name is Katja Bulic and I'm a registered psychologist in New South Wales, Australia. In the last session, we spoke about worry. What is worry and how do we identify worry? And also, what does it feel like in our bodies and also in our heads, right? We also identified what are the situations that are likely to trigger excessive worry and anxiety. So, in this session, we will talk more about when does worry become a problem, and we will also start talking about two different types of worries and how can we manage them. So, let's start with when does a worry become a problem? Well, normal levels of worry are really useful and it can help us lead the life we want to lead and it can help us solve problems. However, when it becomes excessive, it can leave us quite demoralized and upset, and it can also prevent us from having a life that we want to have. So that's what distinguishes normal and excessive worries. So, in other words, if it starts interfering with your life, then it's time to do something about that. So, what kind of worries do we have? Well, in the psychology terms, there are two main types, and these are hypothetical worries or real problem worries. So, real problem worries are worries about something that is actually happening or has happened, and we are actually having to deal with that. So, for example, in the current situation, a real worry would be having what to do with children, for example, when they're off school and having to work at home from home at the same time. So that's a real worry and a problem that needs to be solved. What do I do with the children? However, a hypothetical worry is different. It's about an event that hasn't happened yet. So these are your what ifs, right? So an example of a hypothetical worry would be I'm relatively young and healthy. However, I wonder if there is going to be enough ventilators for me if I have to go to the hospital and if I have a coronavirus. So that's a hypothetical worry. It hasn't happened yet, but it's playing on my mind. Now, one of the ways we can help ourselves with excessive worries is making a distinction and asking ourselves, is this a real worry, a real problem worry, or is this a hypothetical worry? And if we ask ourselves, is this a real worry? And our answer is yes, then we can start brainstorming our actions and solutions to that. And we can actually start doing something about that. If the answer is no, this is not a real worry, it's a hypothetical worry, then we have to develop some strategies or use some strategies that can help us manage this worry that basically we cannot do anything about. And I will talk more about that in the video 3. Hi, my name is Katja Bulic and I'm a registered psychologist in New South Wales, Australia. I'm here with my photographer friend Richard, recording a series of videos about worry at the current times of the coronavirus. So, in the last two videos, we spoke about what worry is, how can we feel it, different types of worries, and situations that trigger excessive worries. So, in this video, I wanted to focus more on the difference between real and hypothetical worries, which we touched on in the last video, but also talk about what can we do with the hypothetical worries. So these are worries where the actual events have not happened yet. However, we are having some really excessive worrying thoughts. Right, so one of the ways that we can deal with those hypothetical worries that often have a life of its own is to practice postponing worrying. So the worrying thoughts will come whether we like it or not. So one of the ways of managing them is to dedicate a certain time in our day that we are going to allow those worrying thoughts to just go wild. And we are actually going to give them some airtime and allow, let's say, 30 minutes for worrying. And what we could also do is sit down and write down for those 30 minutes all the worries that are going through our heads. So that's called practicing postponing worries. And one way we can manage that during the day is when we get lots of worrying thoughts, we can actually say, hold on. I'm actually dedicated some time for worrying later on today when I'm going to sit down and worry. So we can say that to ourselves. Lots of people find writing down worries really, really useful because it just helps them to get them out of the head and onto the paper. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's worth trying. Another way of dealing with hypothetical worries, or any worries really, is trying to be compassionate and kind to ourselves about the worrying thoughts we might have. So, if you imagine that your worrying thoughts are your best friend, what would you tell them? How would you be dealing with those thoughts? So, if you were talking to your best friend and your best friend told you, I'm really worried about this, you're more likely to respond with, oh, I'm really, really sorry to hear that. That must be really hard. What can you do about that? I really hear you and I feel for you. Rather than, oh, stop worrying. Oh, just get over it, okay? We're all in the same situation. You're no different, right? So try your best to really recognize how you speak to yourself at the times of worries, and how can you change that dialogue with yourself so that it's kind and compassionate. Another way also of dealing with hypothetical worries is to practice being present. Worries are in our head, and when we get really engaged in our worries, we lose track of the present moment. And at the end of the day, present moment is all we have. So why don't we just use what we already have, which is our senses, and come back to our senses and use them to ground ourselves in the present moment? What are the 3 things that I see right now? What are the 2 things I can hear? Is there anything I can taste? Am I touching anything right now? So we've got 5 senses, and why not use them to stop that chain of thought that I described in the first session and have a pause by being grounded in the present moment. Hi, my name is Katja Bulic and I'm a registered psychologist in New South Wales, Australia. I'm here with my friend Richard from Richard Bully Photography, bringing you some information, hopefully useful, about how to manage worry at the time of the coronavirus. So, in the previous sessions, we covered what worry is, what we can do about it, where do we feel it in our body, and how can we manage the excessive worries. In this session, I would like to continue along those lines and talk more about how do we manage worries, but also how do we increase the well-being under these different circumstances. So one of the ways of managing worries is also noticing when we get a lot of worrying thoughts, and also what is it that contributes to us having excessive worries. So, for example, you might be somebody that at the moment is glued to the TV or internet. Now, while we want to keep and be informed, that can also be a trigger for worrying thoughts and excessive worrying thoughts. So, one of the ways of dealing with that is really limiting the time and saying, okay, today I'm going to check my phones or the news feed 3 times instead of 10, and I'm going to be watching the news in the morning and in the evening. And that way, we are limiting our exposure to the material that is producing excessive worries. Now, in more general terms, about how to keep your well being up so that you don't get caught up in excessive worry, is maintaining balance. From the psychological point of view, maintaining balance means doing things in your life that are going to produce feelings of achievement, pleasure, and also connection with others in the world. Now, obviously, if you are working from home right now, or if you lost your job, some of these things might be difficult to do. However, there is a way of perhaps including those activities into your everyday life. For example, how do you do an action that's going to bring you a sense of achievement during the day? This can be anything. It could be even very simple things like cleaning up your pantry or doing 5 sit ups, or doing anything really, or completing work or completing a routine that you set out to do, doing anything that's going to give you that sense of achievement. Also, do actions or engage in actions or activities that are going to give you a sense of pleasure, right? So it could be reading a book that you wanted to read for a long time, or watch a series that normally would make you laugh. Have a small bar of chocolate that you absolutely love and you keep for special occasions. Do try and evoke those feelings of pleasure during your day. The third one is connection, and right now that's probably one of the hardest activities to do, but it's not impossible. So, by being able to connect over the phone, if you don't have a video link, is fine, and it can make you feel less isolated and more connected to the world. So, you know your life and what you do during the day, but maintaining that balance of your life and including activities that would provoke those 3 feelings of pleasure, achievement, and connection is going to help maintain your well-being, and therefore not help you, I guess, manage those worrying and excessive worrying thoughts. Hi, my name is Katja Bulic, and I'm a registered psychologist in New South Wales, Australia. This episode, I would like to continue talking about worry and give you some information about other ways that you can help yourselves during this difficult time where some of you might be in isolation or without a job. So, continuing from the previous session when we talked about maintaining balance and ensuring that we do activities that include evoking feelings of pleasure and joy and also achievement and connection, the next thing that is also really, really useful to do in terms of maintaining our well-being is keeping our mind and body active. So, this is a perfect opportunity to perhaps extend your mind and your skills and do something that is going to challenge you and also keep your mind quite active. It's all fine and good if we want to spend a day or in our pajamas watching a next Netflix series. But if we do that day after day after day, you can see how we might actually start not feeling that great. So, keeping the mind and body active is really important. Body too. I mean, even if you're not the biggest fan of exercise, you can do something to keep yourself busy um, in the physical sense. So it could be even cleaning a house. I mean, that would be an activity that would engage all of your body. If you are keen to do exercise, you can also set yourself some challenges or goals and say, okay, in 2 weeks' time, I want to be able to do 50 sit ups, right? What this will also do, so keeping that mind and body active, it also going to give you that sense of achievement that we talked about before when we spoke about having a balanced life. Another thing that is also really important is setting a routine. So if you are staying at home all day, every day, try and wake up at the time you normally wake up. Um, have a shower, have breakfast, have shower, get dressed, and get ready for the day. And whatever you decide to do on that day. And also have meals at the regular times if you can, and also go to sleep at the reasonable time, because that will help you later on when we start coming out of this coronavirus pandemic, and it will help you adjust back to the normal life. But at the same time, having a structure in your day is making your days more manageable. Another thing that I think is incredibly important is practicing gratitude. No matter what the situation is, there is still a lot of things we can be grateful for. And practicing gratitude and having that as a habit at the end of the day, where you write down 3, 5, 8 things that you are grateful for on that day, it's a really good way of reminding ourselves of the good things in our lives. So it could be something as simple as today the sun was shining and I was able to sit in my garden and have my coffee outside. And that's enough to make us think, yes, not everything is that bad. And there are some things that we can be still really grateful for. So, this is the end of our series about worry and anxiety during the time of the coronavirus. I just really want to acknowledge my colleagues from Psychology Tool who developed a resource called Living with Worry and Anxiety Amidst Global Uncertainty, because in the resource that guided this presentation, you can actually find more material and worksheets that, if you're interested, you can use to help you navigate these difficult times. I also want to acknowledge Richard Bully from Richard Bully Photography, who took his time to set this up and record these sessions, edit them, and put them online. Thank you, Richard. And if you would like to have more information sessions about different topics that you think would be useful for you, please feel free to post a comment, and we will do our best to accommodate. Thank you.